Okay, good. Suffering. That's what you can put at the top. Suffering. The title of the talk. Okay, Sharona, you got it? Suffering. Okay. Good morning, friends. Nice to see you. Uh, it's funny that this relates. I actually prepared this talk back in May, and then the Dharma schedule got a little jumbled and I didn't get to give it. And so this week when I was looking back I was like, okay, well, I'll just do it in July, my next time to give the Dharma talk. And now it's July. So I was looking back at the topic and I was like, what? Suffering? I don't suffer. We don't need to talk about that. And that made me chuckle in and of itself because my friend and fellow teacher, Scott C., his classic story is, well, I came to Kozen and I said, well, I don't suffer, right? And it's like, wait a minute, we all do suffer. And I think that maybe word is quite intimidating, the word suffering. But going back to the Four Noble Truths, right? The classic story of the Buddha is that he saw the world, he saw old age, death, sickness, losing one's health, losing one's loved ones. And that's what he bundled into this idea of suffering. And so, suffering as a human is inevitable. It's part of life. And as a mom, and I'm sure we all in this room are mothers and partners and daughters and all the things that we are in relationship to others. And sometimes the chaos of life gets pretty heavy, right? And I like to remember that life is trouble, right? Um, Without the trouble, I mean, even like the little story I was telling you about this morning, it's like, I don't want to be part of a 4th of July parade. And it's like, no, that's the point, right? All of this is the complexity, the beauty of being human and being in human form on planet Earth. So my talk today is about kind of um, what I do with my suffering and how we can move through collective suffering. And there's a lot that's out there, both in our personal life and in the world. And what I've learned through my mindfulness practice and my Buddhist practice is that we don't want to turn away, right? It would be easy. And I've been in these situations where it's like, I don't really want to know what's going on because it can be so heavy. But the practices we're going to talk through, and actually, I'm going to lead us through a practice from Joanna Macy, who's one of my favorite teachers. She's a Buddhist ecologist, is about really being with what is and not turning away. And I think that really is the heart of mindfulness practice. So after the Buddha gave us the Four Noble Truths, he gave us the Eightfold Path, right action, right speech, right mindfulness, right concentration. And so this mindfulness piece is about really allowing us to be with what is. So to see the suffering, to feel the suffering, and to not turn away. And thankfully, knock on wood, I've been really fortunate and blessed to be in good health. Um, my parents are healthy, my kids are healthy. And so a lot of my suffering and my personal suffering has been very like almost I create it myself, right? And one of my other favorite teachers that's part of our Sangha, Venerable Jeff, he likes to say that suffering is wanting the pace of change to be different, right? We want to either slow things down or speed things up, right? That's where like the human experience of wanting things to be different, that is the heart of suffering, right? And so, in my life, if I look at my suffering sort of on the day to day basis, it's, wanting the kids to get out of bed to get to the appointment that we had, right? Sort of like wanting things to speed up, right? Like you're not where you're supposed to be. Or I often have expectations I put on myself for my relationships and friendships, a lot of pressure. I put pressure on my performance, showing up for people. I often try to do too much. I'm somebody that definitely does not want to be 10 minutes early. I would rather be 10 minutes late because I'm trying to squeeze so much in to my life, right? Probably to the detriment of a peaceful and easy experience. So these are just kind of like little tidbits of like suffering on my day-to-day life, that are very, I would say, I don't want to say privileged, but very sort of minuscule in comparison to loss of family members, loss of pets, surviving illness and ill health. And then we go out to the broader community, the earthquake in Venezuela, right? Death, death is upon us at every corner. Classic Buddhist story of a woman grieving for her child, and she's told, go find someone who hasn't been touched by death, right? We have all been touched by death. That is part of this experience. So, what I wanted to offer today is, I don't know if I would call it a recipe, but what I've learned from Buddhist teachings about how to move through suffering in the most human way possible. And so that first step is looking deeply at what is. And our conditioning is that we want to feel pleasant things and we want to push away unpleasant things. But can we actually look and see what is unpleasant and see the suffering for what it is? Second step is to actually deeply feel the suffering. So, not just to see this as a moment of suffering, this is a moment of stress, but to really allow those feelings to come into the body and into the heart, and to really sit with the feeling of fear for a loved one going through a treatment, fear for oneself with uncertain health results. And I think this one, I think this, I think seeing it for me, it's like, okay, it's easy to kind of see it and have kind of like maybe an intellectual wall or a heart wall. It's like, okay, I can conceptualize my experience. Like, okay, this is stressful for me. But then the next step is actually to really deeply feel in the heart and in the body that experience. And you might ask, well, why do you want to do that? That sounds painful, right? Well, it's through that allowing the feeling to be there that we get to the other side of that. So maybe you take heartbreak or something like that. If you actually, and this recently happened with a friendship of mine, and I was feeling like, okay, I don't really want to feel this feeling, right? I'd rather just kind of keep it at bay. But when I allowed the feeling to come into the heart, I realized the heart was just this tender, gentle place that 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 wanted nurturing, like Donald's question of like, how are we tending to our heart space, right? And it was through the deep feeling that the compassion, that natural refuge, abode of the heart, can spring forward. And so there's that there's that tension of letting it in, but through the letting it in, there's the softening and the opening and the shifting that happens. So um Thich Nhat Hanh likes to say about this, darling, I care about this suffering. Darling, I care about this suffering. And that's what happens when you allow the suffering to enter the body, to feel the feelings. There's a tenderness that naturally arises from the heart to care for the experience. And sometimes this might be easier with a friend or a loved one who can hold that tenderness for you. But I guess what I've been trying to cultivate is this self compassion this ability to really allow myself to sink deeply into the pain and see what happens. And I don't, it's so painful. There's no ever expectation that it's going to feel better. It's just like, okay, I've just got to go through the feeling. And then my experience recently is that magic has happened and that there is this softening of the heart. So I want to mention two practices I've learned. The first is from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and he has a beautiful book that he co-authored, and I guess technically he's probably not the author of it, but he and his friendship with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the Book of Joy. In that book, David Abrams talks about their friendship and how they cultivate joy. And there's some practices in there. And one of my favorite is the Lo-jong practice. And we're not going to practice that today, but I want to mention it because this is exactly the practice. What I'm trying to share is what I've learned through this practice, which is that the Lo-jong practice is one of sitting with your suffering. So being in the stress or the pain, and then noticing though that that's a collective experience, not the particulars, but say my heartbreak over a relationship or my stress with my kids. That experience, even though it's mine, it's pretty universal, right? We all have loss. We all want things to go a certain way in the family, in the household. We need to get to appointments. That so the first step is noticing one's suffering. And then the second step is realizing, wow, this is actually part of being human. I'm not alone in this. This kind of suffering is human. And then what's really beautiful about the Lo-jong practice is that the final step is seeing if you can take your suffering, your experience of this pain, and transform it or transmute it into relieving the suffering of others. So knowing that you're not the only one that feels this pain or this suffering, but actually channeling it into some kind of action. That's where the compassion, that sort of compassion wells up in the heart. And not only is it compassion for yourself, that self-compassion, but that there's compassion, which is that wanting to relieve suffering from others that comes through. So if you haven't investigated or seen the Lo-jong practice, I really encourage you to track that down. It's beautiful. But what I wanted us to do today is a practice from Joanna Macy called breathing through. So Joanna Macy spent her life really as an environmental activist, really fighting for nuclear nonproliferation, for climate change. She has a beautiful book called Active Hope, which is about not falling into despair with climate change, but really trying to find this middle path where we maintain hope. We're not falling into despair and we're not just believing everything's going to be okay, but we're actively, collectively moving down a path together, which I think is so beautiful to think about on 4th of July, this experiment of the United States. How can we actually all participate into getting us to that beautiful place that we want and we know our country can be? But Joanna Macy has some beautiful work about allowing the suffering, really allowing the suffering of the world to rest into our heart. And so in a minute, I'm gonna guide us into our meditation today. And the first part of our meditation will be this practice. And before we go into it, I want to say that she says the heart never breaks. And it's the heart that expands and breaks open that can hold the whole universe, right? So what we're doing with this practice is we're building our resiliency. We're building our capacity for holding our own suffering and the suffering of others so that we can nurture our heart garden with what it needs and then that we're not turning away. So we're not turning away from the victims of the earthquake. We're not turning away from the hungry children in Gaza. We're not turning away from who was, struck by drone strikes. We are opening our heart and allowing all of this to come through us. And over time, it's like building the heart muscle and building the compassion muscle. And I just think it's a beautiful practice. So that's what I'd like to work on today. And I'll pause because this is so awkward just sharing to talk on Zoom and everyone's so quiet and respectful. But I'm used to like a classroom where I can see people's eyes and read body language. And so I'm just going to pause for a second and see if there's any reactions or noise from the audience.
You're doing a good job.
Thanks, Donald. Okay.
I love it. As usual, I do want to focus on things like suffering and don't want to be overwhelmed at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm
So,
kind of good at that.
yeah. So there is a little bit of like knowing oneself with this practice, right? Because if you're allowing your body to feel feelings, right? Sometimes that can be unsafe, right? If it's too much, right? If the heart feels like it's too much or the body's experienced too much. So there's a little bit of titration that might have to happen, and you'll have to kind of know yourself to know what can I safely let in? What images of destruction or death or suffering, either in my own life or in the collective, what can I really safely take in without it being too much? But the hope is that like this is sort of like a practice. I mean, Sangha is practice, right? That we're here to practice and we're here to grow our heart and we're here to be love and light and emissaries for peace. That is what Taikozen teaches us. So this is a way to practice that kind of heart expansion. And it's like, somebody might do it this much, somebody might do it this much, and it's wherever we are with our capacity. And it's going to depend on, did you get good sleep and have you nourished your body with water and tea? Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into it.
I'm thinking that part of the struggle with this practice is to figure out how to not be just sobbing all the time. I mean, when I'm truly heartbroken, if I think about it, if I think about what is breaking my heart, I'll just be crying and crying and crying and not kind of able to go forward in my life. So one of the things I heard once from someone who attended a kind of spiritual, what do you call it, in India, not a sangha, but the thing that they do in India with a guru. Anyway, the guru, this woman stood up and poured out her heart and told all the things that were troubling her, and that she had just one damn thing after another to break her heart. And she waited for the teacher's answer, and he just said, "Now what?" So that to me has been very helpful. So yeah, you see what happened. Okay, now what? So you don't, if I dwell on the heartbreaking thing, then I'm incapacitated. So I love that answer.
Tell me how you interpret that answer.
Look look ahead of you. Be in the present. What are you going to do now? I mean, all this has happened to you. Doesn't make you special. Doesn't your suffering is no more than or less than anybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? Now what are you gonna do? All right, look ahead. It's a grounding and a it redirects the focus.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, do you guys want to try it? Should we go into our meditation? Okay. I don't have my bell with me. I do have my bell. Let me grab it real fast. Body, breath, and mind held in perfect oneness. I send my heart along with the sound of the spell. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend the path of anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen. This sound brings me back to my true home. For the first few minutes of this meditation, I'm going to guide us and then we'll go into our silent meditation. This is a practice called breathing through that I learned from Joanna Macy. We'll start by simply attending to the breath. Noticing the in-breath, the out-breath. You might notice how it feels to be breathed today. Perhaps shifting your awareness from I am breathing to life is breathing me. Life is breathing me. And she reminds us that our breath is part of a living web of breath. So the air I'm breathing is the same air that others are breathing. And the oxygen is being produced by the oceans and the forests. And we're breathing out what is being used by others. And so we're in this breath of life. Now the invitation is to be with whatever arises in the mind. Perhaps it's suffering and stress or worry in your own life. Perhaps it's images of war or disease, famine, destruction, fighting. Allow that suffering and the grief around the suffering, the images that we see in the news, allow that to come into the mind. And let's see if there's an opportunity, a capacity in the body to relax and open to that, to truly see what's here, and to open to it, to not resist it, to not push it away, but to see it as part of this world. This is our world. This is here. And here's the practice. Imagine that as you're breathing in, there's a ribbon of air. You might even see or visualize a ribbon of air that's coming in through your nose or your mouth. And on that ribbon of air are those images, those things that we might not want to see that are happening. And as we breathe them in, we allow them to come into our heart. We allow the heart to hold those images, to hold the suffering, to witness, to acknowledge. And then we let them flow out. So we breathe in this ribbon of air. We allow that air to come into the heart, the images, the suffering. The heart holds and sees and witnesses. And then there's the out breath. But we're not fixing or changing or allowing for this to be part of the web of life. It's almost like the heart is a filter. It's a garden. It's witnessing, it's seeing, and it's breathing out. Maybe through this action, the heart is gaining a bit in capacity and resiliency. Heart is not breaking, it's expanding, expanding to hold it all. The field of love and awareness is bigger than all of this. If you've been breathing through images of global issues, global suffering, I invite you towards the end of this right now to pick something that might be troubling your heart in your personal life or in your personal relations. And see if you can allow this practice to maybe soften the experience. Allow the heart a little space to truly feel. And notice that ribbon of air on the out breath. You can still visualize that ribbon of air. Notice that as you breathe out, once again, that breath is connected to all the breath and all the air. We're part and parcel of a living web, interconnection, interbeing. We inter-are with each other. We're learning to drop our defenses and let the world flow through us. Now we'll move into silence. I'll ring the bell at the end of our time together.